Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
It is our tradition to go around and say our names. Your first and last, your drag name, whatever you want to offer. I always like to suggest that you take a breath to actually hear the name before yours. So maybe go a little more slowly. My name is Joe.
I'm George.
My name is Stephen.
I'm Tony.
My name is Rick.
I'm Lee.
My name is Ray.
My name is Matthew.
I'm Brian.
I'm Andreas.
I'm Larry. I'm Clint.
I'm David.
My name is Jerry. My drag name was Sheila.
My name is Harley.
It's
Michael.
My name is Mariana.
My name is Michael.
David.
My name is Christian.
Grisha.
I'm Kay. Jay.
I'm Richard. I'm Bob.
I'm Samuel.
I'm Jim.
I'm Ray.
I'm Mike.
Karen. Just thought I'd change Susan.
I'm Marty. I'm Tom.
Okay. Our speaker today is John Martin. John teaches Vipassana, Insight, Metta, and LGBTQI themed meditation retreats. He leads an ongoing weekly Monday evening meditation group in the Castro, teaches both an advanced practitioners program group and a dedicated practitioners group, and is the co-guiding teacher for the LGBTQIA Sangha at the Insight Meditation Center in Redwood City. John serves on both the Spirit Rock Teachers Council and the Governing Teachers Council. He has had a dedicated practice while being engaged in the working world and emphasizes practice for daily life. He completed the SRMCIMSIRC, wow, 4-year teacher training in 2016. John served as a hospice volunteer for many years, first with Shanti and most recently the Zen Hospice Project. Thank you, John. Welcome.
Great to be back with the Sangha again. I'd like to check the volume. How's it? Volume J is the person I usually look to for the volume. High, loud enough?
Yes.
Okay. And let me know. Just raise your finger if it starts to fade. So, I wanted to speak today about trusting the heart. Trusting the heart. I think another term to use might be trusting awareness. When we trust the heart, when we trust the capability of our hearts to open wide, we're opening to trust awareness too, to trust being present for whatever the experience might be, to begin to hold all of the vicissitudes, all of the ups and downs of life with some sense of open-heartedness, sense of acceptance, and a trust, a deep trust that our practice of being present, being fully present in the world, our practice of meditation, leads in the direction of a greater happiness. That's what this practice is about, leading toward a happiness, small ways, bigger and bigger ways, a happiness that is not so dependent on the exterior conditions of the world, ultimately not dependent on at all. A happiness that's free of depending on having perfect health or finances or relationships, or even changing who's in the White House. So I think this trusting of the heart, we probably all relied upon this when we came out. Most of us, maybe all of us, when we came out and decided to be true and authentic to who we are. For many of us, that was a long time ago, perhaps. But it took some courage of the heart, knowing that there might be suffering we would face, but recognizing the deep calling to be fully true to who we are. So what I'm speaking to is faith. This trusting of the heart, trusting in awareness is faith. A real important part of my own practice, one of the 5 spiritual faculties on the path of practice. And faith in the Buddhist practice is very different than faith in other religions. And I hesitated sometimes to use the word faith. That's why I did the long lead-in before actually using the word faith, because a lot of folks associate it with doctrine or edicts, and that is not Buddhist faith at all. Buddhist faith means trusting the heart, and it implies actually a sense of letting go, not hanging on to beliefs or edicts, but a sense of letting go that arises with the trusting of the heart. So I was reflecting on periods in my own life when faith arose strongly, and maybe because I knew I'd be speaking to this group, what came forward was the way faith arose in my life before I had a meditation practice, during the AIDS crisis, especially in the early 1990s when I lost the largest number of friends. And again, I didn't have the practice, but there was some sense of heart connection and openness that allowed me to be fully present. Maybe this is ringing true in your own life, in your own practice, and memories of that time for those of you who were old enough to remember, who lived through that time. But I found I could be fully present in the face of that great suffering and have a heart that was fully open. And somehow I felt close to the truth. I didn't even know what the truth was. I didn't know what it meant to feel close to the truth. But it started to feel like a calling in my life to have come close to suffering and feel like some kind of a draw towards something more. And this is what faith does. Faith allows us to come close to suffering, come close to our own direct experience, come close to joy as well. To be fully present for our own experiences, but particularly suffering, and then to recognize there is a possibility to be free of suffering. It's the promise of the Buddhist teachings. So it was interesting in opening, I wanted to provide this reflection too. When I was decided to share this experience, I also connected with the memory of leading an LGBT retreat a few years ago, a 5-night retreat. A lot of younger people on the retreat. And I mentioned on the retreat that I was one of the lucky ones, that I felt lucky in the AIDS crisis because I only lost 1/3 of my friends to AIDS. I know for many of you, you lost a much higher percentage than that. But there was a loud gasp in the room from many people because they didn't live through that experience and didn't know just how dramatic it was. And I like to speak about that from time to time to remember, hold those folks we lost in our hearts and remember and honor. So in my own life too, and in opening to that suffering during the AIDS crisis, it opened a door. I started opening to my own suffering of traumas earlier in my life, of painful memories. This is part of the purification process that comes with practice. Recalling ways we've been harmed, ways others have harmed us, and allowing a healing of the heart to come forward. So I've started finding a faith, the strength, the courage of the heart to open to that suffering, allowing a healing to happen. I kept a journal at the time, and I wrote in my journal that it felt like I was going into an abyss and beginning to recall and process all of that. But I also wrote in the journal that I had a sense that it would lead in the direction of a greater, I don't know if I use the word happiness, but that it would be beneficial in some way to be going through this purification process. So, faith allows healing to happen. I think we also all draw upon faith. Many times we draw upon faith more than we recognize, and more than we recognize its faith at work. And I think any time we enter into action around a political cause or a social cause we might choose to engage in, that calling is driven by some sense of faith, the trusting of the heart, that what we're called to do, what we feel is right and just to speak up and take action on, that there's something true about it. And even if we don't know what the outcome of our actions might be, we're trusting that it's the right thing to do. I wondered, maybe that came forward for those at Stonewall over 50 years ago. That the folks who were present at Stonewall, who were facing the violence and hatred of the police, both drew upon the anger and the energy that arises with anger, but also perhaps a deep trusting in the actions and rebelling against that police action, that it was the right thing to do and might lead in the right direction, as it did. Kind of a revolutionary act that broke things open. And maybe all of the people who came out from their apartments came from other bars to support that spontaneous kind of revolutionary act of coming forward in an act of faith, to speak up and act out against injustice, and having some trust perhaps that would lead in the direction that was positive and beneficial to those in our community. Think of Nelson Mandela as a person of great faith. For all the years that he worked to end apartheid and stayed in prison and remained true to his values of nonviolence and reconciliation and forgiveness, even when apartheid ended and he became head of the government, he acted from that place of forgiveness and reconciliation with a really peaceful, loving heart. A great book on faith and the Buddhist understanding, written by Sharon Salzberg. I'll quote a couple times from this book. Sharon Salzberg says, "To offer our hearts in faith means recognizing that our hearts are worth something, that we in ourselves and our deepest and truest nature are of value. When we live from this knowing, our offering is complete, generous, bountiful." So, as I said, there's a deep letting go of faith as we enter in more deeply into our deepest experience and trust the heart, trust awareness. A great quote from Alan Watts that I think defines faith well is this: "Faith is an unreserved opening of the mind to the truth, whatever it may turn out to be. Faith has no preconceptions. It is a plunge into the unknown. Beliefs cling, but faith lets go." Again, you can see the difference in the Buddhist understanding of faith versus the Christian understanding of faith. The word for faith in the language of the Buddha is satta. And Sharon translates that as to place the heart upon. Bhikkhu Bodhi calls it a trustful confidence. I personally like the simplicity of trusting the heart, trusting awareness. I often will look up words I use in talks in Merriam-Webster, and usually that's helpful, but in this case, not true. Merriam-Webster defines faith as an unquestioning belief in God or religion. That's not Buddhist faith. So, if you were raised a Catholic, I just encourage you to set the intention of letting go of that understanding of faith. Catholics especially, I think, were really taught that that understanding of faith as being adopting a set of edicts or beliefs. So volume of my voice still loud enough? Okay. Sharon also says the tendency to equate faith with doctrine and then argue terminology and concepts distracts us from what faith is actually about. Faith is not a commodity we either have or don't have. It's an inner quality that unfolds as we learn to trust our deepest experience. There's actually, with faith arising, when strong faith arises, there's a clarity that arose. Maybe that's what I was feeling when faith was present, when I was with friends as they were dying during the AIDS crisis. There's a clarity and brightness, and that clarity and brightness is what can support the opening to the truth. It can support the release of the heart from all confusion, the direction of our practice. There can sometimes be a real sense of peace that comes forward. Sometimes I felt this very strongly on retreat practice, deep on retreat practice. A deep faith and confidence comes forward, and with that there's a great sense of peace and balance. So, another quality of faith is it allows us to see our inner goodness. Because as we open our heart, as we trust our hearts, we see the perfect purity of our own hearts. We begin to let go around self-judgments and doubt in ourselves when we see our own inner goodness. And it's interesting to know that the very opposite of faith is doubt. Doubt is the opposite of faith. So doubt can manifest when we judge ourselves harshly, when we think we're not good enough, when we think maybe this practice isn't for us, we're not doing it right, whatever form of meditation practice that we're practicing with. But especially when we've got the harsh self-judgments, if we can recognize it as doubt and even label it doubt, still being present for the direct experience, what does this self-judging feel like in the body? What does maybe this self-hatred feel like in the body? That's the call of practice. But at the same time, to know it as doubt allows us to see that experience as not being who we are. See it as impersonal and allow us to not get stuck around that doubt. Doubt hangs on and faith lets go. I love that understanding because it really supports seeing that doubt is not helpful in our lives at all. And I've found in practice most of all it's the trust in our own goodness, the trust in my own heart's goodness that supports breaking through that doubt. Really open to see that we're much more than who we think we are. We can have such a limited sense around the self-judgments. And there's a beautiful quote from Walt Whitman on this about seeing our own inner goodness and opening up to something much larger. Walt Whitman said, "I am larger than I thought. I did not know I held so much goodness." I think all of us begin to open to that with practice. We open to our own inner goodness. And we open to a greater courage of the heart, a greater trust in the heart, not only in letting go to be fully present, actually letting go to let the words that we speak, our actions in the world come from this goodness of our heart, rather than from a place of thinking. I think I mentioned maybe last time or a couple times ago a quote I love to draw from Thich Nhat Hanh. The essence is, wisdom never arises from thinking.
Wisdom never arises
From thinking. It arises from awareness. And the trust and awareness, trust in the heart, this is where wisdom arises. Some of the most powerful experiences I've had with this were in the hospice work, and I recognize that at least one person from Zen Hospice. Anybody else did Zen Hospice work? I know Lee did. Any Shanti volunteers over the years? A few Shanti volunteers. I was a Shanti volunteer. It was powerful. I was a Shanti volunteer in the 90s for 5 years, and then 7 years of Zen Hospice work. Nick, Lee, you and I did the training together in 2007. And did that for 7 years, and it was powerful for me to see. It was really important in my whole practice to enter into that volunteer work, which was just to be present. That's what we were offering, is presence. Great gift. And to begin to have these experiences where the words I would speak and the actions of my body were not coming out of a thinking process whatsoever. There's actually no me in the equation, that I would reach out, touch someone's hand, stroke their head, maybe express appreciation for their beauty of their heart. And it didn't even come from a thinking process. No self, no me in the equation. And I started to learn to trust the heart more and let go of the idea that I could figure things out. A deeper kind of faith that was arising. I'll share a couple of brief experiences that really strengthened this faith and also supported the letting go of such a strong sense of self. I had an experience with walked into a room at the Zen Hospice Center, and a woman was very close to death. And her son was with her. Her son was probably in his mid-20s. And he'd been so loyal to her. Every day he was there. And just before she had entered the hospice center, she'd been homeless for several years. And this young man and his mother had lost contact, and so he was reuniting with her and was very loyal in being there. And I walked in and recognized that she was very near the end, unable to speak. And her son was at the foot of the bed watching a football game. And he was doing the best he could. He was really doing the best he could just to be there. And I asked him if I could sit down, and I sat down next to his mother, and I felt the impulse to say to him, "You should be sitting here next to your mother. She wants you here. She wants to feel your touch." And I didn't say it. And she died shortly after that, as I was there. And I felt such a heartbreak afterwards that feeling I had was so in my heart to ask him to come and sit next to his mom. It wasn't the end of the world that didn't happen, but it was so clearly in my heart, and I let the thought process get in the way to say, who am I to say such a thing? I resolved not to do that, to trust it, even if it meant saying things that might kind of be under the view of who am I to say such a thing. So a few weeks later, a woman had kind of grown close to over 3 or 4 months, had been there for a long time, which was somewhat unusual at the center. And this woman had not seen her daughter in 6 months, and she was ready to reconcile. So she had asked me to come in on a Saturday, not my usual day there, to be with her when she reconciled with her daughter. I was kind of surprised she asked me to do that, but I honored that. And when I arrived, the woman was there, her daughter wasn't there yet, and she was also starting to pass, so she was unable to speak, but clearly she was still aware, but unable to speak. And a lot of moving around in the bed. And when her daughter came, her daughter was asking, why is she moving? What does she want? And I started speaking. She's saying she loves you. She's saying she wants to forgive and heal. And several comments like that I could say, who am I to speak those words on behalf of this woman? But it was so clearly from presence, from the heart, and I'd been invited to be there by her. How could I not trust the heart? It was very moving for me because it wasn't me that was speaking. It was just allowing it to happen, allowing it to unfold. So it's, experiences like that have deeply supported my meditation practice, my retreat practice, to just trust the unfolding experience, to let go, to let the truth reveal itself, to not let my thinking mind get in the way of the process. So, just some reflections on ways to strengthen faith, ways we can draw upon faith, build our own faith. Being in Sangha like this can really support faith, can support this trusting confidence in the heart. I know for myself, maybe for many of you, you experience this at kind of a deeper meditation, most usually when you're in Sangha like this, and perhaps you typically have if you're doing a home meditation. There's a power of Sangha that supports the strengthening this heart quality and opening to our own heart's goodness. And we see each other in Sangha, we see each other's goodness. Maybe in the conversation afterwards, see each other's goodness. And in effect, we're holding up the mirror for other Sangha members and seeing each other's goodness so that we can see it ourselves that way. Sometimes it's loved ones we have in our lives who know our goodness, who don't believe the false, harsh judgments we make about ourselves, who would never say to us, "You're not good enough." Our good friends who see through that, we can draw upon the way they see us as a way to let go of doubt, see our own inner goodness, and let go more deeply, to trust the heart, to trust our own direct experience. And to really enter more fully into suffering. This is the call of practice. This is what faith does. Faith allows us to open deeply to suffering, but also have the confidence that it will lead in the direction of freedom. So it connects right there to the noble truth of suffering and the end of suffering, that peace is possible. It allows us to see the truth that peace is possible in any moment, when we're not clinging, when we're not needing things to be different than they are, when we're not trying to hold on to make something permanent that we like, or pushing away something we don't like, when we're just in the middle of things as they are. Peace is possible in any moment. And we begin to realize that the greatest cause of the suffering in our lives is that hanging on, is a clinging. In any moment, we can let go. I drew great faith, I still do, great faith from my grandparents, my mother's parents, who lived to be 95 years old, had very long lives. But they outlived almost all of their friends from their generation certainly. Outlived my mother by 15 years. My mother was their only child. So that, oftentimes you hear about parents who lose an adult child really shutting down. They kept fully engaging in the world, grieving, but their hearts remained open. And they had such a deep trust in the order of things. I never spoke to them about their faith, but their real just trust in the order of the things, their ability to remain open-hearted in the face of that great suffering. It carried me as a young man, having experienced my mother's death through that difficult time. And then it also I could draw upon the inspiration of their faith as I entered into the meditation practice and started to really see the depth of suffering in my life in a very strong and powerful way. So Drawing upon the faith of others can be a great source of strength. And I've drawn great faith from the Buddha at times, just bowing to the Buddha, bowing to the altar. Just the beauty of the Buddha offering the teachings from 2,600 years ago that we're all practicing with, different lineages, but all tracing back to the time the Buddha fully realized enlightenment and chose to share his precious teachings that we're still practicing with today. I draw great faith in taking refuge in the Buddha, in the Dharma, and Sangha, the three refuges. So, I always love the conversation that follows. I think I'll open it up for comments and questions. And anyone wants to share their experiences of faith, or questions they have about faith, or difficulties they have with the word faith, whatever it might be. Yes.
Well, I just, I don't know if difficult is the right word, but issues with the word doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can sometimes, doubt is a good thing to have.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in my exploration of various spiritual paths, I've been in some that look great from the outside. The teachers or whoever was leading it, folks were terrific. But I always, get more and more involved in spirit. I get more and more sense that something's off here, and I know that sometimes I've reacted by pushing that back and trying to ignore it. But other times I listen to that voice, and I find it very useful. So, I mean, I guess maybe we're using the same word for two different things.
It makes sense. It's like a discerning kind of doubt that you're describing. That is definitely useful. I always seem to learn something more with this group about being more precise with my language and some refinements. So this is useful to hear. And self-doubt is often, there can be self-discernment too, and questioning of ourselves and our actions, but most often I see that the doubt that comes up for practitioners, especially on retreat, is ego. There's kind of an ego-driven, and there's often a lack of self-worth that underlies that.
Yeah, I think it's a different kind of doubt. And like I said, I think maybe one word is used for two very different things.
Yeah.
Like a healthy skepticism sometimes could be a useful thing to have.
Absolutely.
But then also the nearer enemy is cynicism.
Yeah.
Where you just say nothing has any value.
That's useful to hear. Thank you for that distinction. Yes, Lee?
So on that topic of doubt, which I have been thinking about particularly, that brings up the thought that emerged in my mind as I just had breakfast with my friend who was visiting and my spouse, and we had a discussion about politics, a fairly friendly one. But it occurs to me that another description of the another kind of faith is extremism. And in some sense, doubt is an enemy of extremism. So I don't know that fits in the discussion.
It's really confusing, because those religions can use the word faith, but it's a real tightly held kind of view about religious edicts and doctrines. It's doctrinaire. But in a certain sense, I don't want to let those folks possess this word faith, or possess what faith is really about. Real faith is about letting go. The way Alan Watts describes it is like this sense of unreserved opening of the mind to the truth. That's faith. And so when I see people acting and speaking from that doctrinaire attitude, I see confusion. I see hatred that underlies that. It's not love that's underlying that. It's not an opening to the truth. It's a closing up.
So perhaps a near enemy of faith is extremism.
Yeah.
Well, attachment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
Extremism is attachment.
Yeah, thank you, David. Yes.
The way I experience it, I think that doctrine of faith, there's like, it manifests as rigidity in the body. To me, a real key piece is following the felt experience and softening. This is that softening and opening that is connected to the heart and what's really true here and now. And there's another, I'm a student of the Diamond approach, and one of the teachings that has about the love of truth and a particular aspect comes out of what's called the Hubbard. But it's that in the real depth of truth is great pleasure and bliss that connects to the heart.
Yeah, and which is sometimes experiences that great calm and peace and clarity, even in the midst of great suffering. If there's no clinging, even in the midst of great suffering, there can be great peace. And I really love your way of describing it, is a softening and allowing, the letting go. Perhaps the deepest part of practice is letting go most of all of the forces of greed, aversion, and delusion that cloud the heart and mind. But the letting go is more a softening than like right? It's like a softening rather than a throwing away.
Yeah, and it just really opens the heart. I mean, there's that, I guess this is so rich.
I just got to hear Hamid and Karen, who taught in the Spirit Rock Teachers Retreat 2 weeks ago, and the first time I heard them speak, and they were powerful presences. That they speak from presence and clarity and wisdom. Jay?
2 examples in my own life where faith is literally letting go, for me, is putting a letter in a mailbox. I was thinking of that as having a type of faith, and checking a piece of luggage at the airport. That's an act of faith for me as well.
Thank you. I guess I've lost faith in the airlines. I never check bags anymore. Yes.
My recent experience of this opening up and this letting go in this space thing, to me, it's less about letting go than an embracing of a knowing that is not certainty of which is not something that comes from my mind, but something that comes from the place which is open within. But it's, for me, it's an embracing which sort of helps me feel unified and connected with this much larger thing within which there is so much peace.
It's a trusting awareness, trusting the knowing, and finding strength, right?
Yeah.
And ultimately, trusting the heart, trusting awareness are the same. Is when the heart is entirely open, there's perfect wisdom. And so a heart type can ultimately realize perfect wisdom. And then a wisdom type on the path, who has clear understanding of the truth of the way things are, ultimately their heart's open entirely, freed from all confusion. So that there's a wisdom path and a heart path, but they meet. And trusting the heart, trusting the awareness. It's that connect to that feel right to you too, that commonality, that view.
Well, it's sort of like, there's great wisdom, and the heart knows great wisdom.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Now I wanted to say, from what you were saying related to maybe myself, I take from what you're saying being able to trust in myself and being able to trust in my own process, which I've always found beneficial. But what I've also found very beneficial, well, first of all, you can break this down and complicate it with all kinds of language. You could talk about blind faith. You could also talk about giving someone or something the benefit of the doubt. which when you relate it to other people, other kinds of things that are happening in our daily lives, I've always found that very beneficial to take a step back, even though I might trust myself and trust my own process. I'm not just running with things, there's so much going on, up to the highest level of office, but, just to be able to give it the time so that you can make decisions that are well thought out, rather than not.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing is like that too, is like just the trusting to be fully present for every part of your life. And we have such a tendency when something really unpleasant is present, I don't like this, and it's shutting down and not being really present for our direct body experience, our mind-body experience. The Buddha calls upon to be present for it with acceptance, so that we can have more and more moments of these peace, of great peace in the midst of anything. Great. We can be present for joy of others and present for our own joy, but without a sense of clinging to it. We can be present for the suffering, our own suffering, the suffering of others, with a great capacity of the heart that doesn't need it to be different. So it's like it's with faith. I feel it's like a coming into aliveness, coming into full aliveness for the whole of our lives. We have time for a few more. Okay. Yes.
Yes, thank you for a wonderful talk. There were times I commend you. You were speaking so fully from your heart that the room was totally still and completely attentive. So, thank you. Did your grandparents have faith?
They never talked about it, but it sure felt like faith in me because they trusted in the order of things without needing to understand. There was no, why did our daughter die? Why is this happening? A lot of equanimity, a lot of spaciousness, and a lot of love.
There's an account of Flaubert who was so tangled in people's absurd lives, where he witnessed a family having a picnic on the riverbank, and he was staggered. And he said, they live in the real. They're just being kind and being open to the sunshine, and they, you'll be done with it. It's just, and you get that sense of people who are having this sensation of reality, the experience of it.
Simplicity, just the simplicity in that. David and I speak a lot about tathata, the moments of suchness, where it's just any moment, walking down Mission Street afterwards perhaps, or just, there's no great words describe suchness, but just here, just like this, not needing anything to be different, just fully present. Sense of peace and clarity in that. Yeah.
I was raised Catholic, and I'm very happy to replace this definition.
All right. Thank you. Do you like the word faith? Would you be able to use it again? I'm curious.
Yes, and I first came here when my mom passed away, like 6 months ago, and I had to sit through a lot of, religious stuff, and I wanted to honor her, so I did because she was Catholic. But it's still like there's two things going on in your head, like this is such a bunch of and like my mom raised 6 kids, 2 of whom were queer, and but in the church, none of that's mentioned, and there was a lot of stuff. So this is much more helpful. Let's just put it that way. That's one of those words that's approved, right?
I've read a lot of the early Gnostic Gospels and read about those. Anybody else read about the Gnostic Gospels? And they speak really to the truth is we understand in the Buddhist understanding that one is to look within, find the truth within. One doesn't need an institution to make that happen. And the Gnostic Gospels were buried as as a Catholic Church form because there's not room for the institution of the Gnostic Gospel. So the earliest Christianity seems to point to the same type of understanding of faith that's being offered here. Probably a lot of priests would not appreciate hearing that. Yes.
Well, one more piece here. I'm a student of the Enneagram, and I happen to be the type that has the doubting mind. And the holy idea is holy faith, which means it's faith not based upon doctrine, but the faith known from the felt experience that even when you're out of contact with it, you have that reference point of truth.
That's what I felt, is that in that AIDS crisis in the 90s where faith emerged, I couldn't name it as faith. It just emerged. It just emerged as that trusting confidence to be fully present. What number is that on the Enneagram?
6.
6.
This holy strength, holy faith. Holy idea for 6.
Thank you so much.
Always a great pleasure to be with this Sangha.
Do we have any announcements today? Yes.
Yes, just to remind people, GBF's annual retreat is October 11th to 13th. We're at 2/3 full. All the information's on the website, or you can talk to Jerry or me if you have any questions. So if you're thinking of coming, you might consider registering sooner or later.
And registration ends a week from Friday, the 27th of September. But if you need to,
There's some brochures up there.
For those, there's an organization in San Francisco called Project Homeless Connect, and every year they have a huge resource gathering at the Bill Graham Auditorium, and they desperately need as many bodies to come and help. And it's October 16th. I don't have a calendar. It's Saturday around then. But what it is, they open it up. They serve hundreds of people, unsheltered or anyone who needs, where they can get anything from ID cards to eye care to glasses to medical to food to registration for possible housing. It's just kind of a one-stop shop for the community's unsheltered population. And it just opens up all these doors for people that continue for weeks and weeks and weeks after. But there's sign up. They're looking for people to help for that day. So if you're I hear oftentimes we talk about the impact that unsheltered people have on our lives. It comes up a lot here. And here's a chance to really do something, for just a day. So if you go to projecthomelessconnect.org, there's sign up right now for that.
I'm sorry, is it Homeless Connect?
Project Homeless Connect, yeah. I can put a little thing on the Yahoo so people are aware of it, yeah.
Good. I'm your host today. There's refreshments, hot water for tea. When you're finished with your cup, you can put it in the sink or put it in the dishwasher. And at 12:30, people gather at the door to go to lunch. There's a sign-up sheet for the GBF directory, which is on the credenza. And I'll be going around the Donna Bowl. Suggested donation is $10 to $20.
Can I mention that there's a Spirit Rock LGBTQI retreat coming up in December, 5 nights that Anishka and I are teaching. I'd say her last name, but I don't know how to pronounce it. Fernandopol. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
John, what are the dates for that?
I think it's December 6th to 11th, but I'm not sure. Registration is probably open right about now.
Anybody else? Let's gather for closing. By the power and truth of this practice, may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all be free from sorrow and the causes of sorrow. May all never be separated from the sacred happiness which is without sorrow. And may all live in equanimity, without too much attachment or too much aversion, believing in the equality of all that lives.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.